2, the book of the Traveller of the Worlds, Canto 2, the Kingdom of Subtle Matter, page 113, line 360. In that fair, subtle realm behind our own, the form is all, and physical gods are kings. The inspiring light plays in fine boundaries. A faultless beauty comes by nature's grace. There, liberty is perfection's guarantee. Although the absolute image lacks the word incarnate, the sheer spiritual ecstasy, all is a miracle of symmetric charm, a fantasy of perfect line and rule. There, all feel satisfied in themselves and whole. A rich completeness is by limit made. Marvel in an utter littleness abounds. An intricate rapture riots in a small space. Each rhythm is kin to its environment. Each line is perfect and inevitable. Each object faultlessly built for charm and use. All is enamored of its own delight. Intact it lives, of its perfection sure, in a heaven-pleased, self-glad immunity. Content to be, it has need of nothing more. Here was not futile effort's broken heart. Exempt from the ordeal and the test, empty of opposition and of pain, it was a world that could not fear nor grieve. It had no grace of error or defeat. It had no room for fault, no power to fail. Out of some packed self-bliss, it drew at once its form discoveries of the mute idea and the miracle of its rhythmic thoughts and acts, its clear technique of firm and rounded lives, its gracious people of inanimate shapes, and glory of breathing bodies like our own. Amazed, his senses ravished with delight, he moved in a divine yet kindred world, admiring marvelous forms so near to ours, yet perfect like the playthings of a god. Deathless in the aspect of mortality. In in their narrow and exclusive absolutes, the finites ranked supremacies throned abide. It dreams not ever of what might have been. Only in boundaries can this absolute live. In a supremeness bound to its own plan, where all was finished and no widths were left, no space for shadows of the immeasurable, no room for the incalculable's surprise. A captive of its own beauty and ecstasy, in a magic circle wrought the enchanted might. The spirit stood back, effaced behind its frame, admired for the bright finality of its lines. A blue horizon limited the soul. Thought moved in luminous facilities. The outer ideal shallows its swim range. Life in its boundaries lingered satisfied with the small happiness of the body's acts, assigned as force to a bound corner mind, attached to the safe paucity of her room. She did her little works and played and slept, and thought not of a greater work undone. Forgetful of her violent, vast desires, forgetful of the heights to which she rose, her walk was fixed within a radiant groove. The beautiful body of a soul at ease, like one who laughs in sweet and sunlit groves. Childlike she swung in her gold cradle of joy. The spaces' call reached not her charmed abode. She had no wings for wide and dangerous flight. She faced no peril of sky or of abyss. She knew no vistas and no mighty dreams, no yearning for her lost infinitudes. A perfect picture in a perfect frame. This fairy artistry could not keep his will. Only a moment's fine release it gave. A careless hour was spent in a slight bliss. Our spirit tires of being surfaces. Transcended is the splendor of the form. It turns to hidden powers and deeper states. So now he looked beyond for greater light. his soul's peak climb, abandoning in its rear this brilliant courtyard of the House of Days. He left that fine material paradise. His destiny lay beyond, in larger space. So Sri Aurobindo has described to us the kingdom of subtle matter and made it sound so alluring and attractive, with all its perfect beauty and its the way that it provides templates for our world, with its fineness and subtleness. But now, in this closing section, he shows its limitations. And because of those limitations, King Aswapati cannot linger there very long. He has to move on. So we can start reading. You haven't got your glasses. Kavita, you like to start?
In that fair subtle realm behind our own, the form is all, and the physical gods and kings. The inspiring light plays in fine boundaries. A faultless beauty comes by nature's grace. Their liberty is perfection's guarantee, although the absolute image lacks the word incarnate, the sheer spiritual ecstasy. All is a miracle of symmetric charm, a fantasy of perfect line and rule.
No, we'll stop there. A fantasy of perfect line and rule. That fair, subtle realm, that beautiful realm, which is behind our own, like a kind of lining of our own world. Form is all. It's the only thing that matters, the only value in that world. Physical gods are kings. They are not gross physical gods like we have here in ruling our world. But still, they are physical gods. What they care about is substance and form. There's a beautiful light, an inspiring light. It plays in fine boundaries. So there are limitations. They are also beautiful, but there are limits. There, a faultless beauty comes just spontaneously by nature's grace. Here, if the artists aim for faultless beauty, they have to make such efforts. Toil maybe a whole lifetime to make just one or two perfect images, no? But there it all comes so easily. It's just natural. It comes by nature's grace. And their freedom is the guarantee of perfection. They don't have to discipline themselves or make efforts. But the absolute image lacks the highest perfection. The Word incarnate, the creative Word embodied in form, that is not there. The sheer spiritual ecstasy is not there. But still, everything is a miracle of charm, symmetrical charm, absolutely balanced, in harmony, perfect. A fantasy of perfect line and rule, as if there are standards of perfection.
Shraddhavan, this physical gods are kings. It rings a bell that the gods, so let me name them, Ganesha, Lakshmi, they are in this physical, such a world, no?
They must take form there, I suppose, but perhaps they are not the gods that he is.
Sorry?
Perhaps they are not the gods that he's thinking about. He's thinking about the divine powers that rule that world of beauty. Ganesha and Shiva and all these gods, they are more cosmic beings who have a wider rule. Here this is just one small realm, and they have their own powers, divine powers ruling them.
Because the rest corresponds to their capacity to manifest and,
Yes. You see, in our world, it's such a grace that we feel dissatisfied. That is what he's pointing out. In that world, everybody feels satisfied in themselves, already perfect and complete. So they have no need to struggle and suffer. So we think, oh, that sounds wonderful, that sounds like paradise. He calls it that fine material paradise. But it's not what King Aswapati is looking for at all. He's looking for a power that can change this world, this material world, bring to it perfection, divine perfection on every level. And it's because he's in search of that he has to make this great journey through all the planes of existence. Martin, you would read?
Me?
Yes.
There, all feel satisfied in themselves and whole. The rich completeness is by limit made, marvel in an utter littleness abounds. An intricate rapture rides in a small space. Each rhythm is kin to its environment. Each line is perfect and inevitable. Each object faultlessly built for charm and beauty.
So it's really a world of beautiful form. And people who love beauty of form in our world, they might really be attracted by this. But at the same time, he's emphasizing what a narrow, limited little world it is. Everybody feels satisfied, complete. It's a rich completeness, but it's rich and complete because it's limited. There's marvels, wonderful creations, but it's abounding in utter littleness. We may find such kind of beauty if we really look deep into flowers and plants, marvel in an utter littleness. An intricate rapture, intricate, complex, rich, riots in a small space. Each rhythm, visual and perhaps rhythms that are heard, the rhythms of movement. Each rhythm is kin. It fits perfectly into its environment. Each line is perfect and inevitable. Each object faultlessly built for charm and use. It's charming to look at. It's delightful to use because it's so perfect. So inspired craftsmen may be inspired and try to realize such creations here in our world. But they have to make great concentration, great efforts of progress and learning and practice and until they can achieve something of that perfection. But in that world, it all just comes effortlessly, naturally. Rita, you read?
All is enamored of its own delight. Intact it lives, of its perfection sure, in a heaven-pleased, self-glad immunity. Content to be, it has need of nothing more.
Everything's in love with its own kind of enjoyment. No? It's intact, perfect, undamaged, absolutely sure of its own perfection. Sometimes one sees people who are like this, absolutely sure they're faultless and have to be forgiven everything because they're so perfect.
Yeah.
There it's living in this. It feels like a heaven, and they are pleased to be there, and they are glad about themselves, and they're in this state of immunity. They're so perfect, they can't be harmed or damaged in any way. No? They're just content to be the way that they are, and they don't feel any need for anything greater, anything more.
I don't know, I missed, of course, the previous pages, but this is inspiring to me. This is a nice resting place, everything is in order.
Isn't perfect, yes. We long for that. We struggle so much with our own disorder. No? Yeah. And there are people who really care about beauty, and they suffer a lot in our world, I think. No? So then it's interesting to read the next line, Sarojini.
Here was not futile efforts, broken heart, exempt from the ordeal and the test, empty of opposition and of pain. It was a world that could not fear, not grieve.
Yes, that's our experience, isn't it? We work so hard for a particular result, and then nothing comes of it. Futile efforts, broken heart. We feel so discouraged and disappointed. But in that world, there's none of those ordeals, none of those tests, none of that pain, no opposition. No? It was a world that could not fear nor grieve. Amrita.
It had no grace of error or defeat. It had no room for fault, no power to fail.
So this is so interesting. Sri Aurobindo says it's a grace that we can make mistakes, that we can be defeated. No? In that world, there's no room for mistakes. There's no possibility of failing and learning and having to try again. He says, he really points out that this is one of the wonderful characteristics of our world, although it's so painful for us. Shalini.
Out of some packed self-bliss, it drew at once its form discoveries of the mute idea and the miracle of its rhythmic thoughts and acts, its clear technique of firm and rounded lives, its gracious people of inanimate shapes and glory of breathing bodies like our own.
So it's again this idea of the spontaneity. Just at once, out of its own packed self-bliss, that world draws at once form discoveries of that silent idea, the creative idea that is behind. It finds easily the forms to express them. It easily finds the miracle of its rhythmic thoughts and acts that are so harmonious. Its clear technique of firm and rounded lives. Everything is complete and perfect. And so nicely he speaks about these forms. Its gracious people of inanimate shapes. Even the inanimate shapes, like the chairs and the table, they are like gracious beings, beautiful beings. No? And we can miss that in our world. Actually, these plastic chairs are a bit horrible, aren't they? We could wish for something much more beautiful. So, and they're those gracious people of inanimate shapes are matched by the glory of breathing bodies like our own, living bodies like our bodies. But those bodies are gloriously beautiful. Ganga Lakshmi.
Amaze the sense ravish with delight. They move in the divine, yet kindred were admiring their marvelous form, so near to ours, yet perfect like the play, yet perfect like the playthings of the god, deathless in the aspect of mortality.
So this is Asvapati. He's just amazed by all this glorious beauty. His senses are ravished with delight. All the sensuous experiences are delightful. He's moving in a world which is like our world, a kindred world, very closely related to ours. Yet it's divine. And he's admiring these marvelous forms. They are so like our forms, but perfect, absolutely perfect, as if they've been made for the amusement of a god. Tomoko.
In their narrow and exclusive absolutes, the finite's rank, supremacies throned above. It dreams not whatever of what might have been. Only in boundaries can this absolute life
live. So Sri Aurobindo is describing how the powers of the finite, of what is defined, of forms and shapes, there's a kind of hierarchy. Some are superior to others, and they are throned there. It's a fixed order of those supremacies, ranked in order in their thrones, each of them enthroned. That world never dreams. It cannot dream of what might have been. I should look somewhere. Sri Aurobindo has written about this, about the power of what might have been. Here in our world, that power is very important, he says. That we make efforts, we strive to achieve things, and we can't because of the complexity and oppositions of our world, all the opposing tendencies. And yet those attempts, that envisioning of what could be and the attempt to realize it, he says that's very, very important. That influences future realizations. But in that world there's nothing like that. Everything's just ready-made perfect. That absolute can only live in boundaries. There's no infinite perspectives.
But you forget first the line in the narrow and exclusive absolute.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. The absoluteness of those powers of that world are narrow, limited, fixed, and exclusive. They're missing so much. So there they are, they're ranked and they're fixed forever. There's no possibility of anything else. And those powers can only live because they are limited. Slava.
In a supreme bone to its own flame, where all was finished, and no weeds were left, no space for shadows of the ineffable, no room for the incalculable strife, a captive of its own beauty and ecstasy, in a lyric circle, or the enchanted mind.
Thank you. So what he's talking about is the enchanted might, the power which is ruling that world, that power of subtle matter. It's enchanted. It can only be perfect. And it works, wrought means worked, in a magic circle. Also limited. It can't step outside that magic circle. It's actually a captive. It's imprisoned by its own limited kind of beauty and ecstasy. And that magic circle doesn't leave any room for surprise. Now people are trying to design for the Matrimandir the garden of the unexpected, of the incalculable. It's really a very, very difficult task, and I wonder what they're going to do. But it's one of the charms of our world, no? That things happen unexpectedly, unpredictably, incalculably. But in this world there's no room for that. There's no space for the shadows of the immeasurable, what's infinite, what can never be fully realized or known. In our world, the shadows of the immeasurable are cast, and sometimes we catch glimpses of them. But in that world, everything was finished, and there are no wide spaces left for anything else. It's bound to its own plan. It's supreme in that world, but there are no alternative possibilities. No room for surprise. And to us, surprise and mystery are so precious. Those are our future possibilities, all the vastness of future possibility and the unexpected. Sebastian. The spirit stood back.
Yeah. The spirit stood back, a face behind its frame, admired for the bright finality of its lines. The blue horizon limited the soul. Thought moved in luminous faculties. The outer ideals shadows its swim range. Life in its boundaries lingered satisfied with the small happiness of the body's acts.
Thank you. So in that world, spirit is hidden, out of sight, stood back, effaced behind its frame. The framework, the physical framework is so beautiful. We can't see the mysterious, unpredictable spirit behind. The soul is limited by a perfect horizon, blue horizon, which is admired for the bright finality of its line. That's the end. There's nothing beyond. In that world, thought moved in luminous facilities. Facilities, easy thoughts, simple, superficial thoughts. They may be luminous, full of light, but somehow they are superficial. Thought is restricted in its range. It's like stepping into a sea. You want to swim in the depths, but it never gets any deeper. The outer ideal shallows, where it's not dangerous. There's only a little water. It can swim a little way, not far. So now Sri Aurobindo introduces life. We've been talking about form and beauty and matter, different kinds of matter. Where is life in this world? So life is there wherever there's form and substance, there will be life. In this world, life is lingering within the boundaries of that world, perfectly satisfied with the small happiness of the body's acts. In that world, life is assigned, her task is to act as a force to a bound corner mind, a mind that's penned up in a corner, can't swim far. And she accepts, life accepts that role. She's attached to the safe paucity of her room. Paucity means littleness, poorness. She likes it because it's safe. So life does her little works and plays and sleeps and never thinks of a greater work undone. Soon Sri Aurobindo is going to show us the worlds of life and all the vast possibilities that life, the life force can explore. But in this limited physical world, she's forgetful of her violent, vast desires, forgetful of the heights to which life can rise. He will tell us that the highest levels of life almost touch the supreme. Her walk was fixed within a radiant groove, round and round, always the same path, limited. Sorry, I explained that before you had the chance to read it, Praveen. Would you read it?
Assigned as force to a bound corner mind, attached to the safe paucity of her room, she did her little works and played and slept, and thought not of a greater work undone. Forgetful of her violent vast desires, forgetful of the heights to which she rose, her walk was fixed within a radiant groove.
And then he gives us a picture, and Mother has asked Huta to paint this picture and made a comment about it. Hui, would you read the next sentence, please, Yong?
A beautiful body of a soul and easy, like one who rests in sleep and extended ribs. Childlike, she is slow in her own world of joy. The spacious for digit or charmed void. She had no means for wide and dangerous plan. She faced no heaven or sky or her days. She knew no distress and no mighty dreams, no earrings or her infinities.
Yes. So imagine if our life were like that. No? Mother, on the painting which Huta made, the mother said, she is lazy. Life is lazy. Like a child, there she is swinging in her hammock, her gold cradle of joy. And she doesn't hear the call of the vast spaces beyond. She's under a spell. She's living in a charmed abode, an enchantment. So she has no wings to fly high and face danger. No kind of peril, that's also danger, neither of the heights nor of the depths. She doesn't know about any vistas. A vista is a long view when you can see far into the distance. No vistas, no mighty dreams. She's forgotten even to yearn, to long for the infinitudes which life has come from, which she has lost. No, she's not even remembering what she has lost. She's just satisfied to be small in that little physical world.
A perfect picture in a perfect frame. This
fairy.
This fairy artistic. There is not enough love. This fairy artistic could not keep his will. Only a moment's fire. He
Release.
The careless hour was great in his sight.
Yes. So that world is full of fairy artistry, magical artistic beauty, aesthetic beauty, but it's not able to keep King Asvapati's will. He enjoyed a moment's fine release. He can enjoy it for a moment. A careless hour, an hour free from care and trouble, was spent in a slight bliss, small bliss. And then Sri Aurobindo says, our spirit tires of being's surfaces. This is a surface world, this subtle physical world. Our spirit gets tired of the surfaces of existence. It wants to go beyond the beauty of the form. The spirit turns to hidden powers, deeper states. So that's what Asvapati does now. He looks beyond this world for greater light. He's going to climb right up to the heights. His soul is going to climb right up to the heights. So it leaves behind it, in the rear, this world of subtle matter, which is a brilliant courtyard, a very, very attractive entrance place to the house of days. There's so much more beyond. He left that fine material paradise. His destiny lay beyond, in larger space. He can't remain confined in that little surface world, although it's so beautiful. I think I did not explain line 396. These marvelous forms so near to ours. They are deathless. They are not like our bodies, subject to death. And yet they look like our bodies. So they are deathless in the aspect, in the appearance of mortality.
You repeat, Shraddhavan, so deathless in the aspect of
mortality. Those beautiful bodies which he's seeing, they're so like our own earthly bodies. They're even more beautiful, but they are so like ours. And those bodies, they don't live here in our gross physical world. They are not subject to death. They are deathless. But they look like our bodies look, our bodies which are subject to mortality, which will die. So, thanks to Sri Aurobindo. Assigned as force to a bound corner mind, Attached to the safe paucity of her room, she did her little works and played and slept, and thought not of a greater work undone. Forgetful of her violent vast desires, forgetful of the heights to which she rose, her walk was fixed within a radiant groove. The beautiful body of a soul at ease, like one who laughs in sweet and sunlit groves, childlike she swung in her gold cradle of joy. The space's call reached not her charmed abode. She had no wings for wide and dangerous flight. She faced no peril of sky or of abyss. She knew no vistas and no mighty dreams, no yearning for her lost infinitudes. A perfect picture in a perfect frame, this fairy artistry could not keep his will. Only a moment's fine release it gave. A careless hour was spent in a slight bliss. Our spirit tires of being's surfaces. Transcended is the splendor of the form. It turns to hidden powers and deeper states. So now he looked beyond for greater light. His soul's peak climb, abandoning in its rear this brilliant courtyard of the house of days, he left that fine material paradise. His destiny lay beyond in larger space.